I'm Shalini Bala Lucas, and in the last 2 years, 4 people close to me have died. Losing my beautiful, kind husband Jeremy was the most devastating thing that has happened to me in my life, and was perhaps the first time that I was really faced with the meaning of death. Shortly after, Jeremy's mother Gladys, my mother-in-law, passed away at the age of 96. 15 months later, my beloved father lost his battle to cancer, and just 5 months later, Paula, my lovely neighbour and friend, also died from cancer. It was quite simply hell for 2 years. During the first 12 months of grieving Jeremy, I became obsessed with death. I too wanted to die, and I decided to put all my affairs in order, plan my death, and then when the time was right, join Jeremy. But before I could do this, I wanted to have a better understanding of what would happen to me. Would I definitely meet him? Or would death mean lights out, blackness, nothingness? What intrigued me was how different people viewed death, how people talked about death, or as it happens, didn't talk about death. I was struck by how much people fear death, and yet it is something we will all be facing one day. Birth and death come hand in hand, 2 sides of the same coin. The born must die. I was born into a Hindu family, but over the years I have been influenced by Buddhism, experimented with atheism, and been fascinated by spirituality. Hinduism, even though it is not a religion I follow, still informs me in many ways, especially through its cultural roots. When Jeremy was diagnosed with cancer, he insisted we marry, even though we had been together for 17.5 years without being married. He explained that should something happen to him, I wouldn't be considered next of kin or be entitled to any support. This persuaded me, and on the day of our small, intimate civil ceremony, I became a traditional Hindu bride, dressed in red, wearing bangles on my wrists and a bindi on my forehead. These are signs of a married woman, and whilst he was alive, I wore colourful clothes, a bindi and bangles every day. But the day he died, I once again turned to my Hindu roots, and this time, as a widow, I wore white to his funeral, and still do to this day. Gone too were the bindi on the forehead and the bangles on my wrists. I also cut my waist-long hair short. When a Hindu husband dies, a family member will go to his wife and symbolically rub the bindi off her forehead and break the glass bangles she is wearing, adorn her in a white sari, and cut her hair. She is no longer allowed to be attractive to another. She is no longer a wife, but a widow. Her identity, her status, her very being, all tied up in the life, and therefore in the death of her husband. Her identity, status, and being are now threatened. So how is it that even though I'm not a practicing Hindu, some of these rituals and symbolic gestures are so deeply ingrained in me? I wanted to explore these rites and rituals that so fascinate me. But Hinduism is such a vast and complicated religion with different regions observing different rules and numerous varying rituals performed for men, for women, for children. If I were to explore all these variations, well, it would just take me a very long time. So I chose to focus on something more personal to me. I wanted to see what happens to a Hindu woman when her husband dies. What is the life of an Indian widow?
Hindus believe that we don't have one life, but many lives. We are reincarnated time and time again. This endless cycle of death and rebirth is called samsara. When a Hindu refers to death, it is that of the physical body. The soul is immortal. When the body dies, the soul must take residence in another body, being born again to fulfill its karmic duty in the next lifetime. This is the cycle of reincarnation. Linked to reincarnation is the law of karma, which effectively governs all creation. In this present life, we sow the seeds of our next personality in incarnation. Karma reflects a person's actions, the good and the bad. It is these actions that keep the wheel going round. According to Hindus, good actions lead to a better life next time, and bad actions lead to a life of suffering. Hindus work towards being released from this endless cycle of rebirth by striving to replace ignorance with wisdom, replacing darkness with light, and doing good instead of bad. Through the actions of karma and reincarnation, your soul learns new lessons in order to reach a higher, more enlightened state. The soul then breaks free of the physical state and is absorbed by Brahman, the Supreme. This release from the cycle of rebirth or reincarnation is known as moksha. In Hinduism, there are considered to be 16 important rites of passage, otherwise known as samskaras. These include birth, coming of age, marriage, death. Marriage is considered the norm for Hindus as they seek a spouse from a good family when they reach a certain age. The Hindu wedding ceremony follows Vedic traditions and rituals originating from the Rig Veda, the oldest of the 4 ancient Sanskrit books of knowledge that form Hinduism. The mantras within the ceremony encourage the couple to strive for 4 aspects: dharma, that's the right conduct or duty; artha, worldly knowledge; kama, which is love; and moksha, liberation. In this patriarchal society, it is seen that the young bride has now left the house of her father and moved to the house of her husband. She now belongs to her husband. Her entire identity is tied with his. So conversely, should a husband die before his wife, the ideology is that the woman is less than. As a Hindu approaches death, a priest and the family will gather around the dying man, chanting mantras. Devout Hindus will place the body on a grass mat on the floor, and a small amount of water from the river Ganges will be placed in the dying man's mouth. When the man dies, his body is now seen as impure, and so all those gathered around him will avoid unnecessarily touching of the body. Only close friends and family will wash the body in a mixture of milk, yogurt, ghee, and honey in preparation for the funeral. Whilst washing, the head should be facing southward, and a diya or oil lamp is lit and placed near the head, together with a picture of the deceased's favorite deity. All this time, those washing the body will recite mantras. The big toes are then tied together, the hands placed palm to palm in prayer position, and the body shrouded in a clean, plain white sheet. The body is placed on a simple stretcher with vibhuti, ash, or chandanam, sandalwood, applied on his forehead. A garland of flowers, usually marigold, is placed around the neck. The funeral is held immediately, often by dawn or dusk, whichever occurs first. Traditionally, all Hindus, except babies, children, and saints, are cremated. The body is carried to the cremation site, or shamshan ghat, and placed on a funeral pyre. The eldest male relative will then circle the body 3 times, walking counterclockwise, sprinkling holy water, and then lighting the pyre. It is important to note that traditionally, women are not allowed at the cremation site, and so many wives will not be allowed to watch the cremation of their husband. Hindus do not believe in the resurrection of the material body, but rather they believe that upon death, the soul, the very essence of the person, has departed. As the body holds no significance, there is no attempt to preserve it. So cremation is seen as the common practice for Hindus. Immediately following the funeral, all family members will return home, bathe, and wear clean clothes. They will then gather for a meal. The ashes are immersed into Mother Ganga, or the Ganges, on the 4th day. The mourning period lasts 13 days, during which time the family will stay at home and receive visitors. A photograph of the deceased must be displayed prominently with a garland of flowers and incense burning. Usually, on the 12th day, many families will mark the departed life with a feast, marking the day when the soul achieves release. A year later, the family will observe Shraddha, paying their respects to the deceased. There are 40 million widows in India. Many of them have been cast off or disowned by their families. Caste and class do not matter. The plight of widows is similar across the board. Being a widow is considered a curse. They cannot attend weddings or celebrations. They are not allowed to remarry. In India, many women would rather die than have the stigma of widowhood. "16 million of these widows live in Vrindavan. Considered to be the birthplace of Lord Krishna, Vrindavan is a holy city, a place of pilgrimage for many Hindus. Widows believe if they die here, they will achieve moksha, salvation. Krishna, considered one of the most powerful incarnations of Lord Vishnu, is often portrayed dancing with his love Radha, flirting with the gopis or milkmaids, playing the flute whilst herding his cows, or stealing butter and blaming the theft on his friends, much to his mother Yashoda's dismay. But he is also seen as courageous, kind, wise beyond his years, and a true teacher of his time. The Bhagavad Gita, or Song of the Lord, is one of the most popular Hindu texts, and it describes a sermon that Krishna gave Arjun, a Pandava prince. It is a famous discourse on ethics and morality and contains the very essence of Hindu philosophy. In the Gita, there is a verse which says, Jatasya hi dhruva mrityu, dhruvam janma mritsaya cha. Death is certain to the one that is born, and birth is certain to the one who dies.
I look back on these 2 years of grieving, these 2 years of being a widow. I feel fortunate that as an empowered and independent woman who, in spite of untold loss, has come out the other side fighting, and I hope stronger than ever before. Loving Jeremy and to be loved by him was not only my good fortune, it was my destiny, and for that I'll be forever grateful. In my heart, I will always be Jeremy's wife. In society and legally, I will be his widow. But my identity, my status, and my very being are not just about the life we led together, and by no means will be dictated by his death. I will continue to pay tribute to the man I loved by wearing the symbols that showed that I was his wife, my wedding rings, and tying his surname to mine, Lucas. And I will continue to wear white and not wear a bindi or bangles to signify the great loss that I have endured since the day Jeremy died. But one day, when I'm ready, I will choose to leave this label of widow behind me. When I look at the plight of Hindu widows in India, I realize that the fact that I am an educated Indian woman who is empowered and independent to make that choice is in itself a privilege and a blessing. It is a choice that only I have the right to make for myself.